who I am, and from the start I was born in Grove Street, which is not far from where we're living now, in number 13. And that's a bad start for some people, number 13. However, I was born there in 1925, August the 25th, and again I entered this world in an order of events, because it is alleged by some members of my family that I was brought on my birth by the fact that in number 9 Grove Street, which was just down the road from it, there was a family called Macmullins, a large family, an Irish family, and they had a fire. And the fire started, and I was born after the fire was started. So the story is that that's what brought it on. Early life, well, my earliest recollection was being nursed Welsh fashion by my mother. And it was a great thing in those days, because all children used to be nursed Welsh fashion, the shawl that's wrapped right round. And I can remember that down in my grandfather Hussell's house, which is in Talkenna Road, Berry Down. That's one of my earliest memories of that. And I was ill. I was born ill, then I'd probably die ill. But I was born ill because I had asthma and terrible ear trouble. And I used to go down there on a Sunday. My mother used to take me down. And the whole point was that I had to be nursed all the time. Nursed insofar as looked after by my mother. I had terrible earache right through till about I was 8 or 9 years old. It used to be terrible discharge and nights lost. The early days, I really can't remember properly, but that one is outstanding to me, is the shawl down there. Then as a, pardon me, as a boy, my first memory was my first car. It was a box, literally, practically a box on wheels. I used to call it Bluebird, but it didn't look a bit like Bluebird. But I had tremendous fun out of it. And later on, the boys, a gang that I eventually joined, used to push me around in it. I was going to local school. I can always remember, again, my mother spoilt me. Used to come down lunchtime, break time, in the mornings, especially in the winter.
So that was the central school, was that?
Yeah, the central school. With a milk jug full of hot coffee. Sorry, chocolate. Hot chocolate, a drink to keep me warm. God bless her, she was marvellous. Another incident which I always recollect is, for one birthday, I had an acrobat which turned somersaults and things like that. And one of the things we used to do in tea time, when Father was there, Beryl was there, Stan, of course, my elder brother, wasn't there at all very much, because he was away in college. He was 12 years older than I am. We used to have to wind it up and guess how long it would last, right? And whoever won would have a small bar of chocolate, which in those days would cost you a half a penny in those days. And a half a penny in those days is what? Insignificant today. Insignificant. What else can I remember about my early one? Nothing. Once I got rid of the fear of being ill all the time, I then had the gang. And the gang, Vincent O'Brien was one, he was the eldest. Gwyn Williams, he used to play rugby at the end. He was a doctor. Ivor Thomas, he was a singer. He is, I believe, still alive at the moment down in Llanelli. Bryn Mainring, very close, lived in the same street. He's dead now. So it's only me and Ivor Thomas, and I think he's still alive, of the old gang. And we used to go around together, used to be all over the place. Used to play cricket in the lane. But the difference between then and now, if somebody complained, we moved. We never shouted and bawled or did anything like that. Yes, move up the lane. If somebody complained then, move up the lane again. And that's what we used to do. Played with a cork ball. And it was great fun. We used to do that. We used to play marbles. We used to do all sorts of things as we were growing up. Bryn Maining, I can remember, the worst thing I can ever remember him doing was putting a firework through Dan Jones's shop doorway. But that's about all he got up to. But it was for me, a very happy one, a very happy time indeed there.
Did you have any pets at that?
Sorry?
Did you have any pets in your early?
Any?
Pets?
No, well we did. We had a cat. Now unfortunately, we always had cats because in those days there was no association of cats and asthma. It didn't gel at all, right? And the cat we had was called Spider, and used to regularly have kittens, and they were given away, etc., etc. But no, that's all we had, ever cats. We never had anything else. But it was a happy time. We used to go around all sorts of things, you know. We used to go up one lane and tickle spiders' webs. Get the spiders out in a jar. Then go up another lane then and put them on other spiders' webs and watch what happened. And I said, I can always remember one. We put one on in a wall. There's 4 of us there. And nothing happened, see. And Vince O'Brien, I think, said to me, go on, have a look, see what's there. Go on, you don't mind. So I went out to peer in out of this thing, and woof, the spider flashed out into my eye. And from then on, I hated spiders. I had a dreadful thing. Even today, I can't stand spiders. And that was great, you know, those days were fine.
What do you remember about your birthdays and your Christmases?
Sorry?
What do you remember about your birthdays and Christmases?
Oh, well, birthdays, I was always spoilt. I was always spoilt. There used to be a program on television, on radio, called Uncle Mac. And you could, or the parents could, write in to him and say that it was either your daughter or your son's birthday, and tell him that there's a present for him in the middle room or what have you. And they did that to me on one of my birthdays. And, oh, it was great, man. And it was always, I always had happy birthdays. We always celebrated birthdays. It didn't matter whose birthday it was. It was good. Christmases, of course, were spoilt rotten, as always. because my mother was married on Boxing Day. So we used to have parties, family parties. Now her parents lived in Castle Street, down in Aberafan. Her father was a railwayman insofar he was a station master of the old Swansea Bay Railway, which wasn't done away with until, when was the town done? 60s?
60s, yeah.
Somewhere about that. But he was the man that had asthma. That's where I inherited it from my mother's side of the family, because they were called Prices, and they came from Brecon. And the Brecon people were renowned for asthma. That family were. And yes, that's right. They were renowned for it. But when I was young then, going back a bit now to when, if I can remember, we used to spend our time down in Castle Street. That's where my grandfather and grandmother lived. And people like Uncle Percy, etc., etc. And I got a note here, it says here, I put it down specially, where was it? Where did I put that? Oh yes, every Sunday we used to go down after Sunday school and have tea with the family. The adults would play cards after tea, but that was after going into the front room. Could be about 10 people in the front room watching the Catholics go to church, how they were dressed, and you could hear the women say, "Look, there's Mrs. Davis over there, look. I wish she got a new hat, look." And that was calculated. Then as soon as that was done, back out into the living room, clear the table, and get the cards out. And that's what we used to do.
So that was Nana's parents?
Sorry?
That was Nana's parents?
That was Nana's parents, yes, like the Prices.
So where did the Grandpa's parents live?
Sorry?
Grandpa's parents.
Where did Grandpa's parents come from?
Where were they living? In Port Talbot?
You were mother's.
No.
You were grandmother.
Your father's parents.
My father's parents were down in Berry Down in Talcanna Road.
Right.
My father's parents and my mother's side were living in Castle Street.
Right, right.
Her brothers, she had brothers. One lived in the house in Castle Street. Another one, Uncle Harold, he lived in Rees Street. Uncle Stan, who was wounded in the First World War, lived in St. Mary's Place, which is gone now. That was taken down when they did the town. And we all used to gather there, except Uncle Percy, who was a single man. And one of the things, of course, of Castle Street on Sundays, when we used to finish Sunday school, I used to go down, and Grandma Price would always say, "Would you mind going and get a pint of milk from the dairy, or a coconut cake from up the top, or both?" That was always my, what do you call it? And the other funny thing was, the outside loo, I know it's a thing to say, but it's an outside loo, was an old-fashioned one. It was a pull chain, but boarded right across, and it always had Daily Mirror cut up into pieces. Oh, it was fantastic. Used to read that when we were sitting on the toilet.
You know the Boxing Day when you were little?
Oh yeah, wait a minute, before that now. One thing I've got to say, my grandpa Hussell. Now we never had much to do with them really, although he used to come to the house every Saturday morning, And I was hopeless on a Saturday morning getting up. Hopeless. And he'd always come, see my mother, and leave, and it'd always be a silver sixpence on the mantelpiece for me. Always. He's, I didn't know him all that well, but I knew him well enough. I got on well with him, fair play. Because the other Grandpa Price, with a bad chest, when I got down there on the Sundays, he used to read me out the comic strips in the Sunday paper, and he'd tell me the story of all this, and then right at the end there'd be a toffee, an Everton toffee on the end, which was mine, after I'd finished that. All sorts of little things like that, you know, that you can only remember those now and again. They come back up to you.
But what about Grandma Hussell, or Nana Hussell, whatever you call her?
Grandpa Hussell?
Nana Hussell.
Oh, Grandpa Price, you mean?
No. Grandpa Hussell's wife.
Oh, Grandma spoke very little. A very, very quiet lady. Her name was Reynolds, and her brother lived in Parkview. The Reynolds was in Parkview, and he used to work on the docks. But she was a very quiet lady. She actually went to work in service, as they used to call it in those days, in Llansamlet. And Grandpa Price walked from Port Talbot to Llansamlet to get married. On the day he got married, he walked from Port Talbot to Llansamlet. And they got married in the church, the first one if you go down the hill, the one on the right. St. Samlet, I think it's called. Not sure. And then they came back and they lived in Markham Terrace for a long while. And then the house that I was talking about, buried down in Talkenna Road, he built himself because he was a builder. He came across from Devon as a stonemason. And he came to Port Talbot and he started up as a builder. And my father and his brother, Stacy, went into the business together. Father was the practical man on the building sites. Stacy was the office man. The less I say about him, the better. As I say, my mother always used to protect me. Too much, probably. And when I passed scholarship to go to the SEC, to the grammar school, I had to try twice. Because you could have 2 shots. If you were born at the right time, you could have 2 shots to go in. First was abysmal. We had to get 150 marks to pass, and I had 28 in total the first time, because I missed school so much. But the second time I passed. I always remember that. And then when I passed, it shows my health. I was struck down with scarlet fever. So I missed the first year in the SEC. And it was during that time that instead of going to hospital, my mother insisted that she'd keep me at home. So I was allocated the front bedroom in Tannegrove Street, in bed, and nobody else was there, of course, obviously. And there used to be a big curtain over the door, and only my mother used to come in. And I was there, and they were building a gas holder in the steel company, Port Talbot, and I could see it through the window. and I could see it going up and up. I saw it finished. And it was during that time my father bought me a book to read, and it was called The Royal Navy. And that's what the one that set me on my track later on of going to sea. But up until that time, as I say, my health was dreadful. I couldn't take sport when I was in the sack. I couldn't do it. And yet, when I was with the gang in the streets, you know, playing time and all the rest, to play everything, no problem at all. And of course, one of the things we always used to do was always to have chips at night before we went home. And in those days, a penny worth of chips, which is 2 pence today, penny worth of chips. And in order to get that, sometimes, lemonade bottles in the old days used to come with this peculiar catches on them. And my mother always used to have a box with 4 in. And to return those boxes, these bottles empty, you'd have a 80 or a penny back on them. And that's what I used to do. I used to nip it, pinch a bottle, and go to the chip shop and get it traded in, and I'd have a packet of chips. See, it was the boys did, all of them did. Now that was great. And I used to play all sorts of things, cricket, tennis, and anything you like I played, but not officially, but all on my own. And no, I look back on my youth right up to that time as very, very good. I mean, you take a mixture of everything. My 2 families didn't see a lot of the Hussells. Reason was we never got along. When we say we, my parents never got along with them because of Stacy. And of course, my father also had a sister called Millie, Auntie Millie, who was a bitch. Always wanted to make trouble. Always. And my father didn't have a very happy early life, I don't think. He used to get a panning. Always get the fault for everything that went wrong. And Grandpa Hussell used to beat him. And my father was, no, very strange. But as I say, when I look back, I had a very happy time actually, even though I was sick for 50% of it, 80% of it. All right, I was spoilt, yes. Listen to your mother, and I was terribly spoilt. But if you say spoilt, or I call it a different thing, being looked after, right? That's a different thing entirely. I mean, there's all sorts of things. I can remember another famous one. My mother and father were out in the night, and Ivor Thomas used to come in and stay with me, and we'd play, see, in the house. All sorts of things we used to do, like boiling pickled onions on the fire and things like this, you know. And I can remember one day we said, come on then, let's have a cigarette. And I found one. So I split it in 2, and I said, no, they're out. Now, let's watch it now, right? So we lit up, and I said, now come in the front room, and we could see them coming up Eagle Street, see them coming round the corner, and we could put it out, right? So we did this, and we were puffing away there, and I swore, I said, come on, quick, right, glass, right out, like, went. So we shut the door, now the front room door, and they came in, and I couldn't understand why my mother was laughing to herself at times, you see, and, you know, was saying this, that, and the other. Anyway, what it turned out was that when they turned, they saw the glow of the cigarettes in the windows, and they said, they're smoking. So we think, we were clever, and we weren't really, not a bit. But the other thing we used to do is when Ivor Thomas and I used to play football out the front. Again, as you say, if you saw two outside here now playing, I'd say, what the hell are they doing? Only what they used to do, but a difference. I used to roll the Radio Times up and tie it and kick up and down. And we used to do that night after night. But if it went over the walls, right, if it was okay, we'd take it and shut the gates after us. And then we say, okay, we'll have to stop now. Not what they do today. However, well, that's what we used to do. And then I always knew when to come in. My father at 9 o'clock, especially in the summer, would come out to the gate in the back and say, Bill, time to come in. Yes, all right. And then he'd come out then about quarter of an hour later, come on in. And I knew I had to go there.
The Boxing Day anniversary, did they always have parties?
My mother always had parties, right? Christmas Day was put over, was Tannengrove Street. Boxing Day then, they all used to come up to my mother's. That's the family, right? The men used to come in the front room and play poker, right? The women gossip out the front, and have drinks, and generally have fun, It was an excellent sort of family gathering, with the exception of the Hussells never came. It was just the Prices, that side, my mother's side. What happened then? Wait a minute now. Oh, then New Year's Eve, then we went to Uncle Stan's. That's the brother that was wounded in the First World War. We went there, and I can always remember being carried home on my father's shoulder, sitting on his shoulders, and 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning. And those were the days, you see, when you could do that, and everybody was happy. There was no such thing as being attacked or anything like that. You didn't have to worry about things like that. And it was great. And, everybody enjoyed themselves.
So you say you didn't see much of Stan because he was away?
No, well, Stan was 12 years older than I was, you see, right? So that when I became aware, let's say 6, he was 18. So he was therefore going into university, right? So he was away. He started off going into, he got his BSc in Cardiff and going in for teaching, and then suddenly he decided, no, I want to go in for the church. So he changed them, and he went into Salisbury Cathedral, and there's a school there for the church, and that's what he did. Now, he very rarely came home. Up to the time I went to the Conway, yes, I very rarely saw him. Because when he came home then he spent a lot of time down with the Joneses, that's his wife's, Sally's parents, down in Aberarn in Victoria Road. And he used to spend a lot of time with my mother. That was his holiday. So very little time with me. Sometimes we'd have a little game of cricket out the back, spinning and all this. But not a lot. I really didn't have a brother as such, because I'd never had his company.
No.
And, he was the light in the eyes of my mother, of course, especially when he ran in for the church. He was the angel without wings, as we called him. And of course, Beryl, being 6 years older than me, well, she and I were always arguing about something or other, and she didn't bother very much with me. So I was a bit of a loner, really.
Bit of an only child.
Yeah, as regards the family. Grandma Price, I used to love go down there. I could go down there, and she used to love to play a game called Sorry. You could get it today, apparently. And oh God, it used to go through me. But I used to have to condition myself to play that game. And one of the way it's called Sorry is one of the moves you could go backwards and knock off your opponent off, you see, and they have to go back inside again. And I learned not to do that with Grandma Price. She didn't like it. Because at the end of the time, I used to come away with 2 bob, or half a crown, right? Pocket money, right? So if I was short, that's when I go down to see Grandma Price, to play Sorry, right? Have about 4 or 5 games with her, and then she'd go, great. And they all worked out. Couldn't do that at the Hustles. Couldn't do that with the Hustles. And one of my other memories, of course, when I was younger, was one of Grandpa Price's sisters from Brecon. What do you do? What was her name? Auntie Annie. Auntie Annie. Now, if Auntie Annie was coming to Portal, it was a big event, right? And whenever she came to tea to her, Tannegrove Street. And guess what the tea was? Cockles. Always cockles. My mother used to put a big tureen like that, full of cockles. Now, have you ever smelled cockles? Oh, boiling. Oh my God, fathers. Turn you off. I've never eaten them. I don't like them. I wouldn't eat them. But that was the sort of atmosphere again you had to live with, you know. Auntie Annie comes, you have cockles, and that's it. It's as simple as that. And I mean, in those days, you see, there were no refrigerators and things like that. There was the old pantries where they had the big stone slabs, but they put it on to keep cool. And, there were all sorts of things. I mean, I used to go playing. I used to come in half the time and wanted something to eat. So I'd always go into the pantry and there would be with bread and pudding and things like this. And we'd have a slice and off to go again. Or I was a great eater then because we had a patch in the corner of the garden, rhubarb. And I used to have a slice for me and a couple of sticks for the boys and to go eating that raw rhubarb. All sorts of little things like that. And another thing then that I used to do is secrets, right? Secrets. And I found down in the backyard a brick which was loose. So I pulled that out and cleaned it all inside. And now how did I do it? I think I asked my mother, did she have any old beads or something she didn't like? And I think she gave me some, I'm not sure. And I put it behind this brick in the garden. And that was my treasure hole. And I used to see that from the treasure. And they knew where I used to put them, see? Because if my mother couldn't find it, she said, you won't take that, you would have put it down there in your treasure hole? No, I haven't done that. No. And another thing I used to see, again when I was young, could have been about 6 or 7, I suppose. I used to see my mother shaving her legs, right? No, I used to have very hairy legs. Well, I thought, well, if she's doing it, I've got to do it sometime or other, so I may as well do it. So I did it, right? And I did it a few times. What happened? I never drew hairs on my leg after that. Pulled the coat. But I was very hairy before that. Because when she found out, I had a rocket. A big rocket. But I thought it was natural, you see.
Yeah.
If my mother does it, well, you know, I'm going to have to do it sometime or other. But no, I'm not worth it. I found that out. But no, I mean, I made a few notes. You know, I think I've covered it all, really.
Yeah, very good.
Or when we used to go to Berry Down, you never had a meal down there. If you had a cup of tea, if my mother was down there to have a cup of tea, you'd have what are called puff cracknels. And you'd have that, and if you wanted it, you could slice it and put a bit of butter on it. And that is also, that's all we used to have. No, I mean, again, I had cousins up here, you know, John Hussell's brother, Tony, was my age or just not far off. Very rarely I used to go up there to play. There were different chalk and cheese. Different chalk and cheese. Now that family weren't, the Hussells weren't really part of my life, really. They were there, yes, and I got on with them. Fine. But no, it was the prices were, my mother's side was because my father, you see, was an outcast with the Hussells. And we felt, so if that's the case, you've heard it sort of thing. And we used to do with my mother's side. And we used to have great times down there, down in Grandma Hussells, Grandpa Price's. And very happy times. But no, as I say, unfortunately, it was up to the time I went to the Conway. Not very good health, not at all. But let it go from there on after.